All for One's quirk literally just broke down and stopped working, and the main villain of the entire series might be dead. He might be gone for good. MHA just shattered what we thought we knew about quirks, and the final arc of the story just entered the most critical stage. So let's get into it. You guys know how this works. If you enjoy my videos and you want to see more in the future, leave a quick like and comment for that YouTube algorithm. And if you want to help this channel attain quirk singularity by hitting 2 million subscribers, do me a huge favor and subscribe right now. It is completely free and we are almost there. Finally, this video will of course contain MHA manga spoilers, so please proceed with caution. You have been warned. In the previous chapter, we saw the conclusion of the dark and tragic All For One and Yoichi backstory. We saw how All For One killed his own brother, possibly by using the quirk Decay, but once his brother was gone, All For One realized that Yoichi's quirk factor had somehow left his body. That is when All For One learned that Yoichi had the power to transfer his quirk to someone else, and after that, All For One spent generation after generation trying to retrieve his brother's quirk, the quirk known as One For All. But All For One failed time after time, and eventually he was soundly defeated by the 8th One For All user, All Might. Back in the present, All For One decided that he had to take desperate measures in order to avoid rewinding himself out of existence before he had a chance to reach Shigaraki. So he gambled everything on one final desperate move. He activated all of his many quirk factors at once, creating a massive source of power that he hoped would both destroy Bakugo and launch him in Shigaraki's direction at the same time. Now, in the first translation we got, it seemed like Bakugo was confident that he would overcome All For One's attack, and that he even called the villain stupid for thinking that this was enough to defeat him. However, the official Viz translation translated this last part as Bakugo saying to himself, "Oh, some genius I am, how could I ever hope to beat that?" Which is kind of the opposite of what the original translation implied. That said, Bakugo is still smirking as he says this, so he's still got that Bakugo confidence, and you know that he's not going to run away from this. He's gonna keep fighting no matter what. The latest chapter begins with Bakugo's life kind of like quickly flashing before his eyes. We see him being born, with his mother and father looking upon baby Bakugo lovingly, and then we see him in his childhood, back when he still used to be mean to Deku. But then in the present moment, Bakugo declares that he won't mess with Izuku anymore, which kind of just confirms the character growth that we've been seeing from Bakugo for a long time now. Sure, Bakugo still has that crazy fiery attitude, but he's not nearly as much of a raging a-hole as he used to be. Now, you might be thinking, oh, is Bakugo's life flashing before his eyes because he's about to die again, like for the 3rd time? No, he's not. We can all relax. Just drop a like right now for Bakugo not dying again, and let's keep going. Bakugo in the present moment prepares to take on the brunt of All For One's ultimate attack, the attack he launched in the previous chapter, which involves activating all of his many quirk factors at once. But then, Bakugo suddenly reveals that he had an epic trick up his sleeve all along. As Bakugo shouts, "Burst!" that massive clump of quirk factors that All For One generated suddenly explodes, which leads the clump to fall to the ground before it can reach Katsuki. Sweaty boy Bakugo then reveals that earlier on he had covered up the explosive sweat drops coming from his body with normal sweat drops in order to prevent them from being destroyed by the rain. Then, at the end of chapter 406, he was able to get those sweat drops inside of All For One's mouth. This is why he was now able to activate a massive explosion inside of All For One, because the villain unknowingly consumed Bakugo's explosive sweat earlier on. So, 2 things here. First, we have Bakugo being able to activate his explosion remotely from a distance, which is something new and very cool, obviously. Then there's the fact that this was a really smart strategic move by Bakugo, but at the same time, it is incredibly gross. So I don't know if I should praise him or be disgusted by him, or maybe a bit of both, I guess. Anyway, All For One is shocked that Bakugo was able to get one over on him like this, but Bakugo explains that he's always been pretty smart, and unlike All For One, he doesn't need multiple quirks. Just his one single quirk, Explosion, is plenty. That's why they call him Great Explosion Murder God, baby. Now, All For One realizes that his entire ultimate final attack was just ruined by the fact that he decided to drink Bakugo's explosive sweat, and in order for the villain to overcome Bakugo and reach Shigaraki, he would need to activate the whole attack again. Obviously, All For One doesn't have that much left in the tank, so he is absolutely furious that Bakugo managed to defy him. All For One screams at sweaty boy Bakugo that this is his story and Bakugo is just a side character, but Katsuki isn't intimidated at all, and he proceeds to attack the villain with howitzer impact. And as this furious and explosive battle continues, All For One suddenly realizes that there is a serious problem with his quirk. All the different quirk factors that the villain is normally able to control are not behaving as they should. All For One starts to think that maybe his body has already become too small and weak, and so he is no longer able to control the vast amounts of power that the quirk All For One possesses. We suddenly get a glimpse of the vestige world within the All For One quirk. This is of course similar to the vestige world within One For All, except All For One's vestige world is a lot busier because it includes a lot more quirk factors that the villain has stolen over the course of many generations. Interestingly enough, All For One himself now appears as a small child inside his own vestige world, which indicates that just like his physical body, his quirk factor is also getting smaller and weaker. We then see the vestige of Hawks, and as we know, he is there because All For One stole Hawks' quirk after the battle at Gunga Mountain. The vestige of Hawks explains that All For One is now too weak and too emotional to control the other quirk factors. And so Hawks' vestige has been able to gather the other vestiges that came from the other stolen quirk factors. Some of these vestiges appear to be fans of Hawks, while others are just angry at All For One for having stolen them from their original owners. And so Hawks seems to be leading some sort of internal rebellion against All For One within his own vestige world, within his own body, and his own quirk. Hawks says that in the end, All For One's precious new vessel, the one who was groomed from childhood to become All For One's new host, ended up being his greatest downfall. Back in the outside world, All Might states that all the physical and psychological damage that All For One has sustained over the course of this final arc is finally taking its toll. It is finally paying off and having a real effect on the villain. Bakugo counters All For One's claim that he is the protagonist by shouting, "This is our story," and he smashes the villain into the ground. We see that Bakugo's parents are anxiously watching the battle. Everyone is waiting to see what happens next, and Bakugo seems to imply that this is it. After launching another powerful explosion at All For One, Bakugo says that he would never have been able to defeat All For One by himself. But with the combined efforts of everyone at Gunga and All Might and everyone else who helped, it seems that All For One has finally been defeated for good. He is losing on the inside as the vestiges of the quirks he stole in the past are rebelling against him, and he is now too weak to control them. He is also losing on the outside as Bakugo continues to slam him with blow after blow and explosion after explosion. And it really does seem like this is it. This is the moment that All For One falls, and Shigaraki becomes the final boss of the series. I mean, there could theoretically be some massive twist coming, some secret power that All For One has that no one knows about yet, or like Kurogiri just shows up out of nowhere and saves him. But in all likelihood, this is it for All For One. Either he will become incapacitated and unable to fight, or he will rewind himself out of existence. Either way, I think that we are about to permanently shift our focus away from All For One and towards the final epic showdown between awakened Shigaraki and Deku. However, we do have to acknowledge that if this ends up being the end of All For One, there are still some unresolved questions concerning the archvillain that need to be resolved somehow. Are we going to get confirmation that Shigaraki was actually born quirkless, and that All For One secretly gave him the K, which led to little Tenko Shimura accidentally killing his own family and becoming a psychologically scarred mess that All For One was able to take advantage of? Are we going to learn more about the process of creating Nomu? Did Ujiko really bring All For One back from the dead, like the last chapter seemed to suggest? And if so, then did he use the same process that he used to bring Oboro Shirakuma back from the dead in order to create Kurogiri? The Kurogiri plot point is still not yet resolved, so are we going to get a resolution now that All For One seems to be getting ready to make his exit, or are we gonna get something later on? Finally, after all that fan speculation, is there going to be any sort of connection between All For One and the fact that Deku's father has been completely MIA throughout the entire series? There are so many theories. Theories that All For One is literally Deku's dad. Theories that Deku's dad was killed by All For One. Theories that Deku's dad is a villain working for All For One. And so on. Horikoshi promised that we would meet Deku's dad before the series ended. So is it finally that time? Or is he gonna keep teasing us? I need to know, Horikoshi. Come on, throw us a bone. I mean, if my dad went out for milk and he didn't come back for like 2 years, I would have a lot of questions, so hopefully we're gonna get some freaking answers soon. What do you guys think? Did Bakugo just defeat All For One? Is All For One's quirk broken? And is there a way for these stolen quirk factors to be returned to their original users? I definitely want Hawks to get his quirk back, so I really want to see what happens now that the All For One quirk seems to be breaking apart. Don't forget to leave your feedback down in the comments below. If you're looking for more epic MHA videos to watch next, check out my full MHA playlist, link on screen and down in the description. If you enjoyed this video, you know what to do. Leave a quick like to let me know. And if you want to help this channel attain Quirk Singularity by hitting 2 million subscribers, do me a big favor and subscribe right now.